I know we weren't super high on what Dallas looked like after Kyrie was added, but how do you feel right now about the situation in Dallas that obviously has just gone nowhere nearly as good as anyone had anticipated?
So let me ask y'all a backup question to kind of frame this because me personally, when they made this trade, I said it's not championship or bust for them. I think when you make those midseason trades, you usually don't make a push to the title that year. And while falling out of the play-in is definitely something we did not expect, did you guys think this was championship or bust for them or no? Just to kind of frame this.
I don't think I said it was. Um, and I don't think it is championship or bust because, like Devin mentioned when we talked about this trade, there should have been more trades that had to be done for it to be a championship type team. We all kind of agreed like this team currently constructed is not a championship team, even though you add one of the best, 12 players in the world in Kyrie Irving.
Okay.
Yeah, I would
Because
agree. I don't think it's a championship or bust situation. However, to an extent, it's probably some relative amount of success or bust
Yes.
because of the fact that Kyrie could walk. And now, how much that success will play into how much Kyrie wants to stay or whether he wants to leave, only Kyrie knows. But assuming the fact that he obviously wants to play in a team that looks like they're going to be a relatively competitive team, looking and playing as badly as they have is making it a little bit more of a bust because otherwise you just gave up Dorian Finney-Smith and Spencer Dinwiddie, two really valuable players to how they play, for nothing other than 20 some games of Kyrie, which if it leads to not even being in the play-in or being knocked in the play-in is pretty irrelevant at this point. So championship or bust, certainly not, because like you alluded to, Tyrik, they just didn't make the necessary moves alongside that Kyrie trade to be a contender, but they still needed enough success to show some signs of positivity, to show to Kyrie that this was a competitive group that he could want to come back to. And that just hasn't looked the part at all. And now you're going to go into an offseason with probably Luka rumors, even though that's probably a little bit premature, but definitely concerns around Kyrie and whether he stays, and probably a lot of questions around Jason Kidd and whether a new head coach needs to come in.
yeah, man, I feel like when it first went down, I think that you guys were a bit more like some sort of success or bust, or at least just like win or bust, just because of the volatility of Kyrie Irving and what he may do once the off season comes. But to say that any of us expected this result would be a very far cry. I think as far as what was going to happen to them in the playoffs, we definitely had those defensive concerns then. But to go to this extent, I really did not think it would get this bad. I didn't think they'd end up having like a losing record, losing back-to-back games to the Charlotte Hornets. That's just beyond anything I thought would ever happen with this team because to be frank, I just thought the talent of Kyrie Irving and Luka Doncic would be enough to just carry them in regular season games, especially against well below average teams. You think that's all you need is a nice little like Luka 30 piece near triple double, a nice Kyrie 30 piece, and you're probably good. But clearly that hasn't even been enough. And now they're not even making the play in. Like you said, I mean, you might say the Luka rumors are premature, but like he's been talking in the media, like, I'm not happy right now. And whether that's like off court stuff, on court stuff, or a mix of both, it's still like if a guy's unhappy, he may say, like, screw it. Even if some of it is off the court, he might just want to change his scenery and a new thing. If Kyrie's out the door, you're telling me my co-star's gone, all the defense on this team is gone. Like, I'm just out here playing by myself, and this roster is already can't make the playoffs, and I'm losing to all-star talent. Like, do I want to stay here long term? Because at that point, like, I don't know what their asset pool looks like right now, but like player-wise, there's not a lot of guys they can trade for much. So the situation in Dallas looks a bit grim. They just bought in. It made their team worse almost instantly. And these are two guys who are going to make a lot of money. So how much can you really build around them? I'm not sure of that. So it's just a lot of bad things going on there right now. I think to address that last point about Jason Kidd, hopefully he can have some sort of Tom Thibodeau type turnaround in New York because you think Tom Thibodeau first year in New York, got that defense really rolling. They looked really good. And then second year, things really regressed. And then year 3, kind of got back up to that standard, and they've been a lot better this year. So, I mean, Jason Kidd, first year in Dallas, they improved on defense so much and went with a roster that had some pieces but not great defense, and really took them to be a great defense last year. Got to the conference finals with that defense. So then this year, not so hot, and now really bad recently. Hopefully he can figure out something with his scheming in the offseason to kind of have that third year get back to where they need to be. So I don't think he'll go in this offseason. I think he will get more chance than that, especially when they were like a 4 or 5 seed before the trade and the roster got so shaken up. But if he can't kind of fix this scheme and get this team back to a good place on defense by like mid next season, I think you'll hear those rumblings really strong. And even more so if Kyrie's out the door, they're probably going to be in panic mode.
Yeah, if they miss the playoffs completely, you're definitely going to hear a lot of, Jason Kidd potentially being gone. Both just from NBA, media and stuff like that, but maybe just inside the organization as well. Because obviously, we all knew there had to be more moves done outside of just getting Kyrie Irving. We like them getting another co-star for Luka because once Jalen Brunson left and we see how he ascended, there was that void. Even though Spencer Dinwiddie was okay for them, there was that void of just that real consistent secondary co-star next to Luka Doncic. And we all knew they had more moves to make. It's like getting the bases loaded in baseball, but you don't have anybody to drive in the run, right? They needed guys to be able to drive in those runs. And they didn't make any exterior moves. Maybe they weren't there to be made. Like, that's definitely possible. They probably made phone calls, but those moves probably were not there. But it's still very disappointing, man. It's just like going out and losing to a Hornets team back-to-back games. It's just not something that you can do late in the season when you're fighting for your playoff lives. And a lot of people are going to point towards, like, Luka maybe not being able to play with a co-star. He's upset. Maybe he'll, request out. I do think that's premature, but he should be upset, in a way, because this roster is it's not good enough to contend, and he should put that pressure on his front office to this offseason become serious, kind of like how Philly did this offseason, become serious and make those moves. Make some smaller moves, getting like a DeAnthony Melton, guys like that can fill in those gaps, because this team is just missing toughness just really everywhere. In the interior, on the perimeter, they're missing that toughness, and they're just missing guys that do the little things. Like Dorian Finney-Smith would be a perfect guy, obviously, but you had to give him up in the Kyrie trade. They're just missing pieces like that. That's why they're losing a lot of these games, because Kyrie and Luka, to me personally, when I've watched, they've looked fine. They look like they can play off of each other more than okay. Like, they've been fine. It's just the other things, like, you can't have the Dwight Powell playing 25, 30 minutes. Josh Green's inconsistency when he's probably your best perimeter defender. You have to have that consistency. That points towards Jason Kidd, which we've discussed over like the last couple of weeks. But it's just small things like that, man. And, if they miss the playoffs, that's going to be, I think, really bad, which is not looking great for them right now. But, man, it's going to be such an important offseason. One, bringing Kyrie back is going to be huge. Obviously, because you gave up some really, key pieces to go get Kyrie Irving. And if he just walks, then we'll probably see a little accelerated process with Luka and his, potentially asking out for a trade. We could see that a little sooner, but, to say the least, it's definitely disappointing the way that they've been playing. Hopefully they can turn around and at least make the play-in, because they missed the play-in completely, man. That's going to be definitely a failed project for sure, because we just don't know what's going to happen this offseason with Kyrie.
Definitely. It's a lot of important decisions are going to have to get made this offseason. The problem is, like you guys mentioned, about having to retool, having to get serious in the front office and add some real winning pieces around Luka. They've already made so many moves that they've already used so many assets, and they don't have a ton at their disposal. They might not have their first this year, depending on where they finish. It's top 10 protected. So, I mean, if they keep slipping and they get some lottery luck, they might actually end up keeping their pick. But that's no gimme. Of course, they've now traded away another first in the Kyrie trade. They've already moved off of a few seconds. They have drafted relatively well when they've actually had their picks. I mean, the Jaden Hardy pick has looked great. The Josh Green pick looks very good at this point in time. The problem is they just haven't had very many picks, because they had Spencer Dinwiddie move. Most notably, they had the Kristaps Porzingis trade. They've now had the Kyrie Irving trade. They've been active in making moves, and so I can give their front office credit for that. But sometimes you don't just get credit for making trades. There's good trades to make, and there's good non-trades to make. and knowing when to pull the trigger is an important thing too. And so far throughout the Luka Doncic era, they just haven't been able to pull the trigger on the right ones or not pull the trigger on the wrong ones. And it's accumulated in a point now where they're going to struggle to restock their shelves to be able to put the quality of assets they need around Luka, because if Kyrie comes back, they're not going to have much trade equity and not really going to have much cap room to add much quality. So they're just going to continue to rely on guys like Josh Green, like Jaden Hardy to continue to develop. And how they plug the rest of those holes, it's going to be tough because they're just going to be looking at vet minimum guys. And as we've seen from some teams over the last couple of years, especially when you look at a team like the Lakers, looking to plug your depth with mainly vet minimum guys usually isn't a recipe for very good success. So they're going to have some really good, really important and really tough decisions to make this offseason, but they have Luka. So all hope is not lost. They still have one of the most valuable players and one of the most impactful players in the league. But they've definitely put themselves in a much harder position now compared to where they should have been if they had made the right decisions over the last few years.
Yeah, man. I think this is going to start a lot of rumblings, man, because I'm looking at the rest of their schedule, and this is their last 6 games. They got 6 games left. They've got Philly, one of the hottest teams in the league recently, but due to some injuries, probably not going to be full strength Philly. Heat, who are fighting for their playoff lives. Hawks, who are fighting for their playoff lives. The Kings, one of the hottest teams in the league. The Bulls recently got pretty hot and also fighting for their playoff lives. I think they finish on the Spurs, which you assume will be a win. However, that last game of the season, young team, might be a trap game because they might say, oh, we can end your season tonight, and they might have something to play for. So looking at the rest of that schedule, they're lucky that Philly might not be 100% because to get 500 just on the dot, they got to win 4 of those games. And to be above 500, they got to win 5 out of those 6. So it's like they don't have a lot of room to slip up because you got to think of these play-in teams, like even if they want – I don't know if I can trust this team to win 2 play-in games. 1, I can probably rely on Luka to give me 1. But if they got to go 2-0, this team's defense, I don't know, man. I don't know if I can trust their offense to be hitting hard enough both of those games to where they get it.
Yeah.
You got to assume whoever's 7 and 8 in the West will probably be the teams that reach 500. So it's not looking good for them. And where I say some scary agendas might start, dude, these Kyrie agendas – they're going to get a lot of steam. They're going to get a lot of steam. And I know agendas will be agendas, but like you go back, people will go back to, oh, he asked out of the Cavs, went to Boston, didn't work out. He asked out of there, went to Brooklyn, didn't work out, asked out of there, and then ends up in Dallas and then leaves after like 20 games. And they were like, got way worse the second he got there. Dude, his reputation as a team killer, it might get absurd, and while there's way more nuance to that discussion, at that point, I don't know if I can say it's unwarranted.
I think Kyrie's already stuck with that stigma, regardless, honestly. But I think maybe Dallas should just stop trading for all-star guards because last time they did this mid-season, the Rondo trade did not work out. It did not work out. That was like 7-8 years ago. It was a long time ago, but that did not work out for him at all. So maybe this will be the last time they trade for an all-star guard, mid-season. But yeah, hopefully, just if they get into the play-in, they have a chance because Luka, Gabe said he can definitely get you 1 game. I think he could get him 2 because he's just that good. And we saw Trae Young last season get the Hawks 2 games with their abysmal defense too. So it's possible. But yeah, I didn't think that we'd be having this discussion after the trade deadline, even with all the question marks that we had. We were talking about them in the playoffs being a question mark, not against the Hornets in late March. We didn't see that coming.
Yeah, definitely. It was definitely much more of a question of can they win a round, not can they win a playing game. So definitely not the battle that they would have liked to be in as they start to get into the start of April, but nonetheless, here we are, and we'll have to keep monitoring that as we go through the play-in and potentially the offseason.